Hello, my amazing students. This is Mrs. A, and I love math. We are back with your Saxon Orange book, lesson 27. More on the distributive property, simplifying decimal equations. So here we have a refresher on the distributive property. If we take 4 times 2 plus 7, and we add first inside, which would be following our order of operations, we would get 4 times 9, which is 36. If, however, we use the distributive property instead, we would get 4 times 2, and 4 times 7 added together, which would be 8 plus 28, is 36. So we get 36 whether we follow the order of operations or whether we follow the distributive property. So here we have some more complicated problems, and unlike here where we could follow the order of operations and add first, here we cannot subtract. Okay, so we have to do the distributive property, and the distributive property is simply the xy times the y squared, which will be xy cubed. And then we keep the sign because this is positive times a negative is a negative. Y times x squared z. So let's look at our x's first, and we're going to have x cubed. We have a y, but no other y to join with it, so it's still going to be a y, and we have a z. So that would be your answer to our first example. And let's look at the second example here. So now we're going to have this one distributed here and here. And we're going to have 4 times 1, which is 4. And x times x to the 4th, which is x to the 5th. And y cubed times y, which is y to the 4th. We'll draw a line here between our problems. And then we're going to do the same thing carried over here. Positive times negative is a negative. 4 times 5 is a 20. X times x is an x squared. Y cubed times no other y's is y cubed. And there is your second problem. So here we have one that looks a little backwards to us. It looks a little funny, but we can distribute backwards. So we're just going to take this one and go here, and this one and go here, and we're going to end up getting ay times 2x squared y. So we end up with 2a x squared y squared minus, now we're ready to do this one, 8 x squared y to the 6th. And those are our first 3 examples. Okay, so here we have our last distribution problem here, and then we're going to start on simplifying decimal equations down here. Okay, so here we're going to distribute to each one of the 3 parts in the parenthesis, and we're going to 8 times 5 is 40. M squared times n cubed is m to the 5th. X times x is x squared minus 8 times 3 is 24. M squared times no other m's is just m squared. X times x to the 5th is x to the 6th. And lastly, plus 2 times 8 is 16. X times, well, m squared and nothing else is m squared. X times x is x squared. And I just barely have enough room to put that in there. So that's a 16 m squared x squared on the end there. And now, remember last time when I was talking about our solving more complicated problems, we did this one 2 ways. We did this using the decimal subtraction, and then we did it multiplying by a power of 10. And that's what this section is teaching you. multiplying by a power of 10. So I have 1 decimal, 2 decimals, 1 decimal. I always have to go with my most number of decimals because this one needs me to multiply by 100 to clear out the decimals. And since I have to multiply that one by 100, I have to multiply every single one by 100. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to multiply each term by 100. When I multiply this one by 100, it moves the decimal 2 places over and it becomes a 40. Plus, it moves the decimal 2 places over and it becomes a 2m. Equals, moves the decimal 2 places over and I get a 460. Much easier to look at when we have no decimals. So now we're going to subtract the 40 from both sides. Remember, those are the constants there. And I'm going to get 420. So I'm going to get 2m is 420. So I need to divide both sides by 2. And I get m is 210. And that's the same answer you would have gotten if you had done it the other way. Okay, so if you had done it just subtracting the decimals, you still would have gotten a 210. Okay, so now we're going to do the last problem in the section, and then we're going to come back and do some practices. So here I have 3 decimals, 2 decimals, 2 decimals. So I will move them all 3 places because I always go with the largest, and that's times 1,000. So when I multiply every term by 1,000, it's going to move the decimal place 3 places to the right. So 1, 2, 3, and that's a 2k, plus 1, 2, 3, and that's going to, when I add a 0 there, that's going to be a 20, equals 1, 2, 3, 4,020. Okay, so now I'm trying to get the 2k by itself, so I'm going to subtract the 20, subtract the 20, 2k equals 4,000. Divide by 2 on both sides, and k is 2,000. Now we're ready to come back with some practice problems. Here are your first 2 practice problems, A and B. So you want to copy those down and then pause your video. Okay, so on the first one, we're going to distribute this way, the single term toward the other 2 terms. So x has nothing to join with. Y squared has a y squared. Multiplied gives us y to the 4th. And then a lonely p, we're just going to tack him on there because he's multiplied in there. So then we're going to have all of this minus, and then we're going to multiply times the p. So we're going to have x, y squared p, and that's our final answer. Okay, down here, we're going to go this way. Okay, and does it really matter if you went this way? No, and not at all. Okay, so xy times 2xy is going to be 2x squared y squared. And then the negative y times the 2xy is going to be minus 2x squared y. And that's it. So those are your first 2 practice problems, A and B. Okay, so here we are with 2 more distribution problems, C and D. So copy them down and go practice. Pause your video. Okay, so here we're going to distribute, and hopefully you got 3x p to the 8th. And a positive times a negative is a negative. And 3 times a 1, remember it's always a 1 understood. X times an x squared is an x cubed. P cubed times p to the 8th is p to the 11th. Okay, so for D, hopefully you got that answer. For D, we're going to get 2 x squared m to the fourth minus 2 times a negative 4 is a negative 8 x times, so we just have x squared, m squared times m is m cubed. I hope you find these fun and easy to do. Okay, so this is our last hurrah for this lesson. This is practice E and F, so go ahead and copy those down. These are the decimal problems that we're going to do by multiplying by a power of 10. Then pause your video. Go try it on your own. Okay, so this one has 2 decimal places, 1 and 1. So we want to move everything 2 decimal places, which is multiplying by 100. So we multiply by 100 and move the decimal 2 places and get an 8x. Move the decimal 2 places, fill in with a 0. We're going to get a minus 10. And then equals, we're going to move this one 2 places. And now we fill in with a 0 and we get 1670. So now we're going to add a 10 to both sides. That's going to give us 8x equals 1680. So we divide by 8 and we divide by 8 and we get x equals 210. Okay, so we can go back to the beginning, or we could go back right here because we moved the decimals over 2 places. We could go back right here, and that one was 8, that one was 10, negative 10, that one was 1670. We plug in a 210 right here. That's going to be 1680. Take away 10 is 1670. So that looks like that is the correct answer. So on this last practice problem, we have 1 decimal, 1 decimal, 1 decimal. But before I move all those decimals, I have 2 like terms that I can combine. So 0.7m plus 0.6m is 1.3m. Because 7 and 6 is 13. And so we're going to get 1.3m equals 3.4. So divide by 1.3 and divide by 1.3. And m equals, now 3.4 divided by 1.3, that would not be a proper form to leave this in. I have a decimal within a fraction. So I'm going to move the decimal 1 place, multiply the numerator and the denominator by 10, and I get 34 over 13. Now, I started in decimals, so I'm kind of a fraction gal, but I really should end up in decimals, shouldn't I? So I'm going to go ahead and put the answer in decimal form. So 3.4, we'll just do 34 divided by 13, and that's going to go in 2 times. And that's going to give us 26. Subtract, and we're going to get 14 minus 6 is 8. Okay, so 8. And then bring down another 0. 13 into 80 is going to go maybe 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. Carry the 1, 5 times 65. Oh, it goes one more time, doesn't it? 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 1 is 6 plus 1 is 7, so 78. And I come out with a 2, and so I'm going to have a 20. And so that last one would be a 1. Okay, so it didn't tell me where to round it off to, but I probably would round it off to the 1 decimal place because everything else is in 1 decimal. So if I was going to round it, it would have to be 2.6 All right, or I could leave it in its fraction form. They really didn't tell me which way to leave it. So this is exact, and this is an approximation because it's not done yet, is it? So that one is probably not going to come out for a while. So we're just going to leave it like this for this time, okay? And that is your last two problems. We are done with lesson 27, and this is Mrs. A, and may God bless your day.